details, try to become present. God, we thank you for parents. And we ask you to help us to minister to whole families together, to help spread your word to them. Help us to minister in a special way to these families so that they can recognize your presence at home, at work, school. Help them see you everywhere. We ask you to open our minds and our hearts to how you want to touch us this weekend and what we're meant to learn. And we thank you for this great opportunity to gather together in this place and in this time. We pray this in your name. Amen. Okay, so my name is Paul, and we're going to be talking about families. We're going to be talking about parents and how we can connect with parents. And I always like to start out by showing you my family. So this is my wife and my two daughters, Madeline and Rachel, and this happened this week. So a week ago, she had those 3 teeth. And the last one came out actually at the restaurant. We were on the way to the airport, so the last one came out just as I was leaving. So exciting times, right? Okay, so I work for the Pastoral Center. So we are a business that provides pastoral resources, practical resources to help folks like you who are in parishes. And so we run the website, pastoralcenter.com, and then we also have a special ministry called Growing Up Catholic, and that's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today, which is this ministry to families and coaching parents. And we're here exhibiting, so if you want to talk to me more after this talk, later on today or the rest of this weekend, I'll be around with information about a number of our resources. Okay, so I want to get a little sense for who you are. So how many of you out there are catechists? Okay, do we have DREs or DRIs or however you refer to them here? Okay, do we have any folks who are in baptism-related ministry? Sacramental preparation? Okay, so we have a good mix of folks. Any roles that I'm forgetting that you want to yell out? Confirmation? Teachers. Okay, right. Okay, sorry. I should have called out to teachers. Grandparents. Excellent. Representing here. Okay, so the final part of our little housekeeping is that, so what we do whenever we do presentations is that we like to make it easier for you so you don't have to take detailed notes of the presentation. So we send out notes if you're interested. If you want to sign up and give us your email address, you don't have to, but if you're interested, just put your name and email address, and please print clearly, because every letter counts, and every time I do this, about 5 emails bounce back, and then I have to guess what your email address really is. So I'm going to start passing this around, but we also send out a free Coaching Parents kit with a bunch of resources with that. So that's really part of our ministry is helping you step into this kind of an approach. Okay, so here are the goals of our presentation for today. We want to have a conversation about the role of parents and what it should be, what do we want it to be, what do we hope it would be, talk about why this does not happen, and how we can fix this. And then we're going to talk about practical resources, because even if we believe that we should do things differently, if we don't have the resources to do it, then we're kind of stuck. So how do we make this easy to do as well? Okay? We want to make you think a little bit differently or provoke some thought in this talk. Okay? Well, so let's start here. Here's my question for you. What role do you want parents to play in the faith formation of their own children?
Making sure that they bring their children to church.
Okay, you want them to bring their children to church. So
we see them, they want to be in our program, but we don't see them at church.
Okay.
So what is the problem?
So we want them to come to Mass. Yeah, which is a pretty low bar too, but we want them to at least do that, right? Okay, yeah.
We want them to talk to their children about their faith.
We want them to talk to their children about their faith. Okay, great.
Pray as a family.
Pray as a family. Okay, other things?
Support what we're doing in school at home.
Support what you're doing in school at home. Okay?
I think they need to be role models and practice what teaching.
Be role models, so to teach through their actions. Great. All great things. Any other thoughts?
I want them to feel confident that they can be the role models, they can teach their children, they can share their faith. I think in my parish that most parents think that they aren't equipped to do it. And I keep trying to tell them you are. It's not, it's not like this great big thing that you have to worry about.
So you want...
That's why you're giving it to us. I want them to feel that they are empowered.
Okay, so you want them to be confident, you want them to believe that they can do this. Yes, which is, there's a disconnect there now, is what you're saying. Okay. Okay, well let's jump in here. So what do we know? We know that over 90% of adult Catholics are active today because their parents were active in the faith. Only 10% of Catholics become Catholics as adults, right? So parents are playing a big role in those who are actually ending up Catholic and self-identifying as Catholic as they grow up. So parents play this essential role. And so here's the core principle. We're not going to be able to succeed in faith formation if parents are not in the picture. This isn't something that we can do if parents are not talking to their kids at all about faith or reinforcing it or driving their kids to Mass, like just where we started, right? The kids can't drive themselves, okay? So this is kind of our starting point. For better or for worse, whether we like it or not, the parents are going to play a very big role in this. We might be frustrated with them or what they're doing or not doing. But this is what we need to do, is to engage parents if we want faith formation to last a lifetime and not for just this short period while the kids are in religious education classes. Okay, so let's take a look at a little timeline here of what's changed in the church in terms of formation. So starting up with up until 1960. So this is when we had a very strong Catholic culture, right? I mean, some of us are in my generation or younger. We weren't born yet when this happened. But from what I'm told, there was a very strong Catholic culture. So there was formation going on in the house where if you walked into a Catholic house, you would know it was a Catholic house, right? Some people are not, right? There were kind of different ways that we did things. There were things that we would put up on our wall. You would see crucifixes. You would see pictures of Mary. You would have an emphasis during the seasons on certain practices that actually happened in the home, right? So you would have fasting and abstinence. You would have a practice of people going to confession much more regularly. And you would also have more of an emphasis on family time than we do today. But this was a different time. But kids kind of picked up the faith through seeing all of this happening. Okay, there was this overall culture. So this started to shift, but at this point, religious education filled kind of this tiny gap in trying to actually pass on the faith from one generation to another. Okay, but this will become a little bit clearer. Let's look what started to shift. So then in the 1960s and 1970s, the old Catholic culture started to change and end, this older culture. So in society you had a stronger, television and media started having a much bigger influence on just the way we lived our lives. You had a huge cultural shift in the West. You had folks going to Mass less often. And family life started to change as well. So through this phase, you have religious education having a bigger gap to fill in terms of passing on what it means to be Catholic. Okay? And then we move to the 1980s and 1990s, and now we have shifted to saying that, well, religious education is going to happen in the parish. And the parents are mostly absent, so it's something the catechists are going to do it kind of for the parents. Mass attendance is way down, and home life is much more secular and media-oriented. We have less and less focused family time. So a big shift has happened over this period of years, and now we have this huge gap that we need to fill in religious education, where we're trying to fill in for parents doing essentially nothing in the household. Does this make sense? Okay, so some things have definitely changed. And now let's look at what has happened in the U.S. Catholics. Okay, so of Americans who were raised Catholic, 30% of them self-identify as practicing Catholics. Well, we identify them as practicing Catholics, meaning that they attend Mass at least once a month. Okay, that's kind of a low bar again. Once a month of people who are raised Catholic, that's how many still go once a month. That means roughly half of them are there on any given weekend. Okay? Okay, and then we have 38% of them that are nominally Catholic, which means that they consider themselves Catholic. If you ask them, they would say, I'm Catholic. But they rarely or never attend Mass, so less than once a month. Okay? So those folks who come a couple times a year, for example, they would be in this bracket. And then 32% of those who are raised Catholic are no longer Catholic. They don't consider themselves Catholics. Okay? So this should scare all of us, right? I start with the depressing part here. But so what's happening? So the faith is not getting passed on to the next generation in a lot of these cases, and we need to look at why that is. And we need to think about what we can change so that this is not going to continue happening. These numbers look even worse if you look to the younger age groups as well, as those younger generations are coming through. So the numbers tell the truth that something is going wrong. And we need to think about if these kids that we're teaching right now, whether they're going to have faith, whether they're going to consider themselves Catholic or come to Mass when they are adults. So there's this huge indicator in terms of the roles that the parents played in their faith formation in terms of whether those kids are going to continue to be Catholic. So let's talk about the folks, the parents that we have showing up in our parishes right now. So there's two groups that we're going to find. We're going to find those who are deeply engaged, about 16%. So it's a minority of those who are the parents that we see, who are the parents of kids in your classes, or those who are showing up for Mass in general. Now, these are the folks that we know, right? The 16%, you may know their names. They're the familiar faces who are coming every week. They may be trying to intentionally build a household of faith, but even some of these folks may be a little bit reluctant about their role of teaching their kids in the faith or raising their kids in the faith. It's like, well, that's why I bring them to religious education class, right? So that you guys can teach them that, okay? So they believe that that's the job of the parish. At least some of these folks do. But then we have the other 84% who are kind of on the edge of the parish in one way or another. So they might be kind of tentative about their faith. Religion may not be that central to their lives. They show up when their kids need it, so they're going to come and give their kids the sacraments maybe. But some of them might be hungry for more, but others, they're just distracted by life, right? So these are the folks that we're dealing with, and these are the folks who are bringing their kids. And they may still be coming, but their children probably won't. These are the folks who we need to love the most, and the folks we need to connect with the most if we want to keep the faith being passed down. Okay? So this passing on of the faith from generation to generation has slowed or stopped. I mean, is this something that you're seeing? Does this make sense? Okay. Okay, so let's see what the parents are thinking. We've heard some of this already from the sharing that we had. So many of these parents, they feel unequipped. They don't know how to do it. They don't know their own faith, so they don't really have something to pass on. They don't have a strong grasp of it themselves. And many of them, they just don't have the fire of faith in their own hearts that's really motivating them. So what happens? So they drop off the kids at the parish and they go shopping. Right? Okay. And what do we do at the parish? Well, we accept the kids. We do the best that we can. We do a pretty good job, but we're always going to be substitutes for the parents. Right? This is really primarily the parents' role for what they should be doing. Okay, so maybe you'll say, well, Paul, that's nice that you think that, but I mean, is this really what the church teaches? Well, funny, if you read the Catholic Catechism Catechism of the Catholic Church. If you read Vatican II documents, dogmatic Constitution of the Church, you read what St. John Paul II wrote, you read the General Directory for Catechesis, which is supposed to lead us in what we're doing in all catechetical work. Well, these are the terms that you start to see about what they use about the role of parents, that it's essential, irreplaceable, inalienable, vital, that it's almost impossible to substitute, that it's a right and a duty for parents to be in this role, that we shouldn't be trying to take away from them, and that it's a responsibility. So these are pretty strong terms to be used, especially when we kind of look at what the reality is and what happens in the church right now, and what this is sort of saying that we should be doing. So here's what the General Directory for Catechesis says, that the parish's role, the local parish must therefore help parents by whatever means work best to prepare for and assume their responsibility of educating their children in the faith. So we're going to talk about what means might work best, because this is what we're supposed to be doing. And this is hard to do, and this is not what we're used to doing. But if we don't do this, we have this larger problem on our hands. Okay? Okay, so here's the shift. Here's what we need to do. We need to turn the parents into catechists. Okay, so where does that leave us? Are we out of a job if we're catechists? Well, we're going to turn the catechists into coaches of the parents. So what we need to do is we need to be lifting up, empowering, equipping, helping the parents to take on this role. This is their being the primary role. And what that's going to mean is that it means that we're going to have to raise the expectations about what we believe that the parents can do. Okay? And they are going to rise to those expectations if we empower them, if we shift our model and start focusing on them to take on this role. Okay? So, all right, so how do we do this? So what we propose is that we need a new kind of religious education event. And here's what that event is going to look like. It's an event in the parish where parents come with their kids. They don't just drop them off and leave. They come with their kids. Second, the parents are going to be the teachers in this event. They're going to be the catechists. And the catechists are going to coach the parents to form their own kids in the setting of this event. And the parents are going to grow in their own faith as part of this event. Okay? We're forming the parents as much as we're forming the kids. But we're especially forming the parents to help them learn how to form their own kids. It's not just about forming the parents. Okay? And get into details here. Does this make sense so far? Okay. You're just all curious what this is going to look like, right? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give you a recipe here to follow. Okay, so here are some different steps or some different pieces for what you need to make this kind of event and make it successful. Okay. So first, you're going to set up tables where the parents and children sit together. They're going to sit together as families. This is probably obvious, but so you see these the groups of the triangles, right? Those are your different families there. And you see that they're gathered around a central prayer table. Okay? So we want them to learn together. The second thing is you're going to need to have a strong resource on the table to guide those parents. And you need a resource that's designed for this. So what would happen if you just plopped a textbook on the table for each of those families? They'd be intimidated because those things are thick most of the time. Any other thoughts? I mean, they're also just not going to know where to start, right? I mean, so you need something that they're going to be able to do and pick up that they've never looked at before, right? Because you can't expect these parents are going to prepare beforehand like you prepare as a catechist, okay? So that's the kind of resource that we need to have, something that's not going to intimidate them and that they can do. And you can create your own resources, but there's also resources out there that will help you, and we'll talk about those. Okay, number 3, we're going to do this in a parish gathering. So if we want the parents to do this, and if we have a great resource, why don't we just send home the resource and say, have the family do it at home? They'll forget about it. Anything else?
No community either.
No community. no support. So if they get stuck on something or have a question or whatnot, or just kind of need some help or nudging or whatever, then there's nobody there to help them. Okay, so that's why we do this in a parish gathering. This is also something where we can send other things home, but we need to teach them, initially coach them, to get started. Okay, so if it's not going to work for us to just send things home, as good as those resources could be. Okay. Number 4. The resource, what we hand out to them, we're going to number the steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to make it dead easy for them to follow. Okay? Because, again, they're looking at it for the first time. Number 5, we're going to give them the answers. So, one is that they may not know the answer, so that's a problem. But the other problem is we never want to make the parents look bad in front of their own kids. Right? Because that's just going to undermine the whole process. Okay? So we want to empower them, help them, and remember, most of the parents are on the margins, right? I mean, we know the parents who kind of, we know their names. Those are the folks that are in that first smaller chunk of the pie. But we're talking about, we really need to be making sure that we connect well and help those parents who are, are less likely to know what the answers are and more likely to need more help. Okay. Number 6, we want to make it interesting and fun. We don't want this to be something that seems like a class or seems like work. We want to help these families have a good time together and connect. There's a special time for them. And a lot of times families have very limited time. They're with multiple jobs and all of this. This is dedicated time that they don't have very much of in their lives with their own kids. So we want to make sure that it's a good time for them together. And number 7, we're going to send it home. Send something home that gives them next steps, ways to go deeper, but especially ways that are going to reinforce this in the home and are going to make those household practices start happening that are going to reinforce the faith. And number 8, finally, we want to not forget that this is about loving Jesus and about a connection with Jesus. And we want to make sure that this isn't just about learning facts, but that this is about an overall, a full faith model. Okay? This is about helping the parents and the kids develop a relationship with Jesus. And how do we expect that the kids are going to do this if the parents don't have that going on in their own lives? Okay? All right, so does that make sense so far? For these steps, we're going to look at some specific resources here that are going to make this a little bit clearer to you of what this can look like. Okay, so we're going to talk about this Coaching Parents timeline. These are anchored by the sacraments here. Okay, so you have baptism in the blue, you have First Eucharist and First Reconciliation, that kind of happens in the middle there, and then confirmation there on the right. And so we'll talk about, this is where a lot of people show up at the sacraments, right? So we're going to kind of anchor based on those, but talk about what can happen in the periods before and after. And we're going to start by talking about First Eucharist and First Reconciliation, and confirmation and restored order, maybe moving in that direction, it sounds like. So that happens in this little step right here. And we're going to use an example, which is our Growing Up Catholic sacramental preparation program that was designed to use this model. Okay? You can create your own resources, but we're going to talk about it from our own model because it's going to put it into practice, and then you're going to see how it can really work. Okay? It's going to put those principles to work. So here's how this resource works. It's in 6 sessions. It's in English and Spanish, and it's a handout-based resource so that we're not giving them everything in one big, thick textbook. We're giving a little handout with 8 pages per session. And how it works is there is one handout for the kids, and it's going to look pretty typical to a lot of other resources that you'll find out there, some activities and such. But there's also a handout for the parents. And the parent handout shows the reduced child pages, and then it goes step by step through with numbers saying, this is what you're going to teach your kid right here. Just enough text so they know what they're doing, but not too much because they just don't have time to be reading a lot of things in that context. Okay? So there needs to be a balance there. And then there's a third handout for the catechist. And this tells you what you do, how you coach the parents, how you kind of keep everybody moving through the process. So there's some communal aspects to the process where you might stop and say, okay, let's share what came up there. There's a group prayer experience, so you're gathering all the families together toward the beginning of the session, and some other things like that. So it's not just the families working all alone, but most of the time is with those parents working one-on-one with their own kids. Okay? So let's take a look at what some of these handouts look like, some of the details. So here's an example of one. This is for teaching the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer. Okay? So on the kids' handout, you have the different phrases, the whole Lord's Prayer here, and then what it means on this side. So they're drawing lines to connect, to try to learn what these things are. Okay? Here are the notes that we give to the parents, just to give you an idea. So it says the purpose of this exercise is to understand and pray the Our Father. It's number one. Number two, first read through the words of the Our Father with them. Read one line and invite your child to repeat it after you. Your child should know the prayer by heart. Affirm your child often as he or she learns. Okay, so they're reading through this together. Simple, basic, makes sense. Okay, then help your child find the correct meaning of each phrase of this prayer. Draw a line to that. We have given you 2 clues to get started, and here's the key. Okay, so we're giving them the answers. We're telling them what to do. So, does this seem like it's reasonable for even somebody who's kind of on the margins to figure out what to do in this setting? Kind of, it's going to be new for them, right? So we did one of these sessions, and afterwards, the dad came up to us and said, I never would have believed if you told me at the beginning of the session, I just taught my kid what the Our Father means. So I can't believe that just happened. Okay? So this is possible. And what you're going to learn is that, while there might be some resistance to when you tell them that they have to show up to tell the parents that, the parents actually want to do this. Once you start doing this and they realize what they can do, and that you're empowering them so that they can actually do it, they want to do it. I mean, we hear about parishes where the parents are asking for more sessions, that they want to meet more times because this is valuable to them. Okay? So let's look at some more pages just to give you a better idea. Okay, we always have a scripture page in these sessions. So this one is on the Good Shepherd. So number 1, we will now read about how Jesus is our friend, just as a shepherd is to his sheep. Number 2, begin by showing your child a Bible. Open it to show them this passage. So this is where it comes from. This is the child's version, in easier language. Tell him or her that we are going to read this story in words that we better understand. Okay, so what did we just do in that step? Anything interesting there? So we had them open up the Bible. Okay, so this is sort of little triumphs here, but we got them to open up the Bible with their kids. And as catechists, we're gonna try to get them to bring their own family Bible in to do it. Okay? And this may be the first time that they've opened up their Bible. Right? Okay. So when we want to have them using the Bible at home, we need them to first identify where that Bible is, actually touch it, bring it in, and they're making this connection to where the reading is coming from. Okay? But we're just getting them started. Realize these parents are doing this for the first time. Okay, number 3, then close the Bible and ask him or her to read the passage aloud. Help them when needed. Ask your child to retell the story in his or her words. Okay? Okay. So then we always have a coloring page or a little activity here. So this is a time when they can take a break and get snacks and all of that because they start getting wiggly by this point, kind of halfway through the session. So this says, time for a break. Help your child to enjoy coloring this image of the Good Shepherd. Number 2, coloring time is a good time to be close to your child without necessarily talking about faith. Don't be afraid to put your arm around your child during this time. And it is just precious what happens when you just give little hints to the parents to be connecting with their kids. Number 3, your child may not be familiar with what shepherds do. Explain that they look after their sheep with tenderness and love, and Jesus watches over us that way. Okay? So we want to do a little reinforcing and kind of give them an initiative. Okay, tell your child about this in your own words. Okay? Okay, and then at the end of every session, we always have an at home this week page. So this is the part where we're saying, okay, we're sending you home with some little task to do before the next session. And what we do in these is we try to identify what kind of things we want to start having in the household, ways that they can build households of faith. In this particular one, it says, as part of the preparation for communion, help your child create a little plan for being more loving in daily life. And there's a little chart there for them to fill in and work on. And it says, number 2, this week practice the reception of communion with your child. Use the notes at the bottom of the page to help you. Your child will feel more comfortable with some practice for a funny video of how to receive communion and how not to. See this little link. Okay? Okay. And these are what the family goals that we most focus on, some of which we mentioned already. Prayer at home. So how do we pray as a family, whether it's praying at meals, whether it's praying at bedtimes, or praying at other times. Using the Bible at home, Scripture. How to have supper together as a family and kind of committing to that when that's something that's happening less and less often. If we can't have conversations around the dinner table, what hope do we have for passing on the faith to the next generation? And faith sharing at home, which doesn't have to be a really formal kind of faith sharing, but how do we help parents and families get into the practice of talking about what matters to them and kind of reflecting on it in the context of their own faith? Okay? So we're kind of coaching them toward those things as well and making it reinforced with both the kind of curriculum that we're using as well as these at-home goals. Okay, so what should we call this approach that we're talking about? I mean, this is where we got this term coaching, where we came to with coaching. So why do we use the term coaching? Well, it's language that's not threatening, right? We're not telling them to be a teacher, which might be kind of even more intimidating or such. So it's understandable language. And it's a relationship word, right? So it's saying, you aren't in this alone. We're here supporting you. We're going to help you. But this is your responsibility to do, right? It's like you're the player on the court, but we're going to be the coach that helps you do what you're supposed to be doing, what you can do, okay? And we need to start thinking of ourselves as coaches, which means that our role is to help them practice and develop their skills. Okay? And then we're going to cheer them on from the sidelines. Okay? We need to think of ourselves as partnering with parents, that we're inspiring these parents to fulfill their own role. We need to think of ourselves like this, but with better skin, maybe. But parents are the heroes in this picture, right? So we're trying to bring out what's the best in them. We're trying to teach them and form them so that they can be the heroes. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So, in order to do a good job of this, we need to get in their shoes. We need to understand where they're coming from. Especially those that are different from us, because those of us who come on a Friday to an event like this, we're kind of the church nerds, right? So and the people who are coming, the parents who are coming, they are not the church nerds, right? So we need to understand where they're coming from, be realistic, and we need to solve their problems, because the issue isn't that they don't want to pass on their faith to their kids at all. It's other issues and other things that get in the way, right? So we need to understand what those barriers are and help them get past those. And if we're solving their problems, then we're going to be working with them instead of trying to force them to come to events and force them to, we're going to check if you come to Mass every week or approaches like that. We need to talk to them and listen. So we need to be partnering with these parents in order for us to support them and lead them through this process. We need to anticipate their needs. Okay, but the thing is, we can't just add this on to our current system. The system is broken the way that we do it right now, where we assume that parents aren't going to be there. We're kind of trying to take over for them because we can't force, they just aren't doing it, so we need to do it for them. So it's not, we need to think about how we reorient our whole process around empowering parents rather than just kind of slapping something on like, oh, well, we'll just send a handout home to the parents and we're trying to support them. If they just read the handouts, then maybe they'll be good. But we need to think more deeply than just tacking on something a little bit extra. That's for the broken system. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this period around baptism. So young families, baptismal preparation, etc. Okay. So those folks who are doing baptism preparation, do you have any frustrations? What works or doesn't work well in baptism preparation? Any thoughts? Here, I'm going to give you a quote from Father Jim Mallon here. He says in this book, Divine Renovation, he says, that couples can, in good conscience, look you in the eye and affirm that they clearly understand what they are undertaking in having their child baptized while having no intention of coming back the following week tells us that we have a real problem. This doesn't happen in any of your parishes, does it? No. Okay. Okay, so we kind of have a problem where we have a bunch of folks coming in for baptism. They don't really want to be there. They kind of maybe they want the baptism to happen. Maybe their parents want the baptism to happen. Maybe the grandparents want the baptism to happen. But they kind of come and then we never see them again, or we don't see them for a long time. This is when a lot of folks they come in and then they disappear again, right? So this is frustrating if you're a leader. And we pay attention to getting the ritual all right? We get to make sure, okay, we're going to take the pictures, we're going to do the ritual, all these sort of things. But then they don't come back to us and we don't go back out to them. Okay? He calls sacraments our greatest pastoral opportunity just because of this dynamic. Because, I mean, here are folks who are coming through our doors who we could be reaching out to and who we could be trying to kind of bring back to the faith, but we just kind of let the same cycle go over and over and just kind of let them go. And from the parents' perspective, they're just not that into us at this point. A lot of them are, at least. I mean, you have those who are the folks who we know who are coming to Mass anyway, but what about all these folks who kind of show up who we've never seen before and then we never see again? But they are really into that baby, right? I mean, that's what's turning their lives upside down, and they're busy and they're trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Okay, so what do we do with these folks? What do we do? I mean, if we think it's important for folks to have a connection to the church and a relationship to Christ, I mean, how important is that to us? And is it going to motivate us to do something different? Well, the problem is that our baptismal preparation programs, they kind of presume that folks are in that 16% chunk of the pie. They presume that it's folks who are kind of engaged already. So we just kind of teach them about what baptism means. And we say, well, and you're going to stand here and you're going to answer these questions. But if it's someone who's not engaged, then there really isn't a faith connection going on. So we need to start thinking about this from the perspective of evangelization, because that's what we really need to be doing with these parents. And that's both connecting them with their own faith, but it's also talking to them now about what it means to be a parent, a Catholic parent, and what that role is. So if we expect them that they're going to be passing on their faith to their kids, we need to make sure that they have the faith to start with. They need to be evangelized first. So here's a little idea. What if we started thinking about baptismal preparation like it was a little more like RCIA? Something where we're actually engaging these parents, these adults, on their faith. So what if there was kind of an inquiry-like process where you're kind of saying, well, where are you at? And what questions do you have about the faith? What if there were sponsors? What if there was some kind of rite of acceptance if these parents are kind of committing to go through this preparation process and committing to raise their kids in the faith? We have the sacrament of baptism. That's the same in both, right? It's just the kids are getting baptized in this case, as opposed to the adults in an RCIA process. And then what if we had something for afterwards, like a mystagogy-like process, instead of saying, well, the baptism happened and see you someday, hopefully. Okay? So what if we started with where the parents were at in the baptism preparation process and connected what they're going through as new parents with the baptism and with their faith? Okay? So we've talked to so many different people who are so frustrated about baptism and what's been going on and this whole dynamic. So we came up with a resource to try to address this. So we came up with Growing Up Catholic Baptism Preparation, English and Spanish. And this is a process that's conversion-based, that focuses on the faith of the parents. And it starts with where the parents are at. Okay, it's welcoming and inclusive and coaches them along the way. What it's going to do is it's going to talk about the connection between the Paschal mystery and them becoming parents. And we're going to particularly reach out to non-Catholic spouses because that's more and more the reality of what we find. So then the question is, well, should we be just excluding the non-Catholic parents? Should they be coming to these sessions or not? So the idea is to include them in the process because they're going to be raising these kids too. And if we want the kids to be raised Catholic, we need to have both parents understanding what we're talking about here. And there's a lot of overlap in terms of, you don't have to be Catholic to raise your child as a good person and a person who follows those ideals that we connect with as Catholics. Here's what the model looks like. It's a flexible format, so it can be between 1 and 3 sessions, although if you want to do something meaningful, you're going to need some time to actually work with these parents. It's handout-based. They're all just 2-page, double-sided handouts that just gives them the information that they need. And we try to de-emphasize, but we include the baptismal theology and details. The parents are not really as interested as we might think in all of the theological details. It's important to teach them some of that, but if they really don't care about the faith at all, we need to kind of start there, and we need to engage them there. We emphasize the faith journey, and we emphasize parenthood, and we welcome godparents and others. So, we'll have a handout for the non-Catholic parents and guardians, answering their questions and kind of walking them through the process. We want to be especially welcoming to them. And many of them are from other Christian traditions, and we share baptism. Most of it is all the same, so we should be welcoming them into the process and be partnering with them as well. We kind of start off by just very basics along the journey of faith, and this would be this kind of thing that you would see in kind of RCIA or inquiry process, where we're kind of asking, well, what's your background in the faith? What was it like when you were a kid? What do you remember? What happened when you were a teenager, or maybe when you became a young adult? Did you fall away from the faith? Just talking honestly about what happened and saying, well, what aspects of the faith are important to you? Let's talk about this now if you're going to start into this process of raising your child in the faith. And then we make this connection. This is the core of the process where we say, when you become a new parent, you are dying to yourself in so many different ways, right? You're saying goodbye to your old life and what it was like. And you don't even realize until you go through the process just how much is going on, and it's in so many different ways. So this is what parents are experiencing right now. And some of them may be having a hard time with it, even though they may not want to admit it, because in our society it's like, well, we're all supposed to be perfect parents, right? Nothing's supposed to be going wrong. You should be really happy that you're becoming a parent, even if you're getting no sleep and it's a frustrating process and all of this. But this is the Paschal mystery. Because this is dying to yourself in love, just like Christ died to himself in love for us. And it's dying in love for this other person, and this person who's coming into our lives. So the parents realize something is going on, but if we can connect it to our faith, this is going to make it more relevant to them. This is going to make it make sense. And that, the kind of things I'm trying to do as a parent, I'm doing this by following what Jesus did for us. So, in order to open up time for us to talk more about these sort of things and how it's meaningful for folks, we're going to, push some of these, some of the frequently asked questions about baptism, some of the details. We'll put them in some handouts. We'll give them time so that they can read them. And these are the kinds of questions that, the parents are always asking, right? So these are things like, oh, I heard about limbo, and does my kid really need to be baptized because of this? Or, our kid has never sinned, so why does she need to be baptized? Or our grandparents are pressuring us to do this. What is it? So we're kind of talking them through the things that you really hear, or the things that they want to ask, right? So we want to give them the opportunity to get the answers for that, and then ask questions. okay? But not spend a whole lot of time in the sessions, like kind of reading all of this through. And then we send them forth on with tools for the faith journey. We're saying, well, what's the support that we can give you? What's the support that you can commit to in your own life to help you through this point of early parenthood? So that's a very mini. I'm giving actually a fuller session on baptism and young parents tomorrow, but this is just a little piece to give you an idea of what we could do maybe a little bit differently. That might be more meaningful and connect with parents enough so that they might consider coming back next week to Mass, or stay connected to the parish, or that we can invite them back for particular events. But I want to spend some time talking about this part after baptism. So what do we usually offer for this time period? What do we offer to parents during this early crying room? Yeah, well, and then we say, well, why aren't they here? So we usually pick up kind of the kids get into kindergarten or so, and they say, okay, come to faith formation, because now we have something for you. Okay, so that's kind of a bummer if we don't have anything for these folks, and this is a hard time for families. This is when we're kind of losing them. Well, what's the pastoral need here? Where are these parents at? Well, we've talked about it. A lot of them feel disconnected from the church, and their kid is noisy and wiggly, so I don't come to church because it's just really hard to control my child. And so they get in the practice of just